Good afternoon, or good morning, depending on when you're watching our 3 o'clock read. I hope you've all had a great day so far. We're going to get started on chapter 13, and we're going to read part 1 of chapter 13. If we remember last time, it's when Lil and Oz and Tulip all found the Ouija board, and there was a strange message that we couldn't quite make out. So, let's see what happens next. At breakfast the next morning, a strange telegram arrived. It was the latest from Mrs. Mendoza's contact in Cairo, who kept her up to date on the events in the Valley of the Kings. In the few days we'd been travelling, Mr. Carter had been worryingly busy. He'd cleared 16 sunken steps, at the bottom of which appeared to be a sealed-up doorway. Yet today's message had a rather queer ring to it. That poor canary, was Mrs. Mendoza's first reaction on reading the telegram. We all stopped eating. Apparently Lady Evelyn, that's Lord Carnarvon's daughter, brought a canary to the dig so they could check there weren't any poisonous gases before going inside the tomb. Did the bird die? I asked. Apparently a snake killed it, Mrs. Mendoza tutted. Hardly thrilling though, is it? How am I going to write a lead story about that? What sort of snake was it? Oz asked, looking up from his book. He never ate in front of other people, Tulip told me. Yet he happily came to every meal just to sit there and read. Does that matter, darling? But she read the message again, her finger trailing under the words. Bird bitten by cobra. Death almost instantaneous. Carter and Lady Evelyn trying to calm anxiety over possible curse. Death shall come on swift wings, Tulip reminded us. Looks like Mr. Carter knows about the curse, but he's being blockheaded and refusing to be scared off by it. More fool him, I thought grimly. Isn't the cobra a protector in Egyptian mythology? I asked. Oz nodded eagerly. Uraeus, the rearing cobra, guardian of kings and queens. Sounds to me like Tutankhamun's curse is trying to keep the archaeologists out, said Tulip. I hoped it succeeded, at least until we got there. Mrs. Mendoza, though, looked positively cheered. You've given me a story, darling, so thank you. And she went off to type it up. Later that day, the train made a stop at a little country station. Oz said it was Yugoslavia, though I wasn't sure how he could tell. The platform was empty, but for an old woman selling lemonade. Looks like someone's joining the train, I said, pointing to a motor car that pulled up just as we did. Whilst Tulip and I were speculating on who was in the car, she thought a film star, I reckoned a spy. Oz announced that he wanted some lemonade, so I said I'd fetch him one. By the time I'd done so, the motor car had dropped its passenger and driven off. The man now on the platform was young, thin, not very remarkable looking, so probably more of a spy than a film star, I decided. Slopping lemonade, I hurried back to our part of the train, but not before the man called out to me. I say, where do I get on for second class? Because all of a sudden there wasn't a train guard in sight. I pointed further down the train to the big second painted on the door, but he seemed a bit confused. He had 2 suitcases and a bag that kept slipping off his shoulder, and a not quite there-ness that reminded me of Dad. Tulip was beckoning me furiously to hurry up. Thinking it was the quickest way to get back on the train, I took the man to the second-class door, then hopped in behind him. Almost straight away the train lurched forwards and we were off. Thanks for your help, the young man said, touching his hat brim. He had a straggly beard and a nasty scar under his eye, but his smile was a nice one. Finally, a guard appeared, asking to see our tickets. I didn't have mine on me. Where's your destination, young miss? The guard wanted to know. I'm going to Luxor, I told him. Are you? The young man perked up hearing this. Then I hope you'll be keeping an eye on Howard Carter. Though he smiled as he said it, I heard enough about Mr. Carter to detect an edge to his voice. I still need to see your ticket, the guard interrupted. Who are you travelling with? With Mrs. Mendoza in first class, I explained, and her children, Oz and Tulip. I can fetch my ticket if you like. The guard was actually quite jolly about it. The young man, though, who showed his ticket all fair and square, looked so very startled I felt sorry for him. Are you all right? I asked him. Have you got on the wrong train or something? What? No, I'm fine, thank you. He smiled his nice smile. Keep an eye on Carter, though. I will, and I gave him the lemonade because he looked in need of it. 20 hours later, we finally reached Athens. Just as we got off the train, a new telegram arrived for Mrs. Mendoza. My heart sank when I saw who'd sent it. It's from Mr. Pemberton, I whispered to Tulip. We've been rumbled. Tulip's mouth tightened, a sign she was annoyed. I don't believe this man, Mrs. Mendoza cried, shaking the telegram in disgust. What's he saying? Tulip asked. He's pretending I misunderstood him, Mrs. Mendoza exclaimed. Doesn't he remember the telegram he sent last week? It's probably just a mix-up, Tulip said quickly. I didn't know how she kept so calm when my insides were squeezing like a mangle. Mrs. Mendoza snorted. Well, he's ordering me back to London at once, the stupid fool. Says he's already sent a replacement man to report on the Carter story. I was horrified. We couldn't go back with our tails between our legs, not when we come all this way. As we stood there, fretting, I caught sight of the second-class ticket man again. He almost looked like he was coming over to speak to us. Then Oz turned around, frowning, which seemed to put him off. He touched the brim of his hat before melting into the crowds. It really must be a mistake, Mama, Tulip was still saying. All your tickets are booked, so someone at your newspaper obviously knew you were coming. Let's keep going. We're only a boat ride away from Egypt, I pleaded. But it was Oz who said the exact right thing. And Mr. Pemberton sent another man, Mama. Mrs. Mendoza straightened her shoulders. He can stuff his orders. We're not going to be beaten to the best story by some young pup, are we? I can't tell you how eagerly we agreed. The telegram goaded Mrs. Mendoza into action. Instead of stopping into Athens overnight, we were now carrying straight on to Egypt. There were no more passenger sailings that day. But Mrs. Mendoza refused to wait until morning. I'm a reporter chasing a story, she reminded us. By the time we reached the port, it was raining. A cold wind had picked up, and beyond the harbour walls, the waves were white-topped and rather large for my liking. The English Channel had been relatively flat. Just the look of the sea today was making me queasy. A few US dollars later, and a man with an enormous moustache agreed to have us on his boat. As soon as we got on board, it was obvious we weren't the only cargo. From the hold of the ship came sounds of bleating. The smell was eye-wateringly bad. Ugh, Tulip pinched her nose. What is that stench? Goats, Mrs. Mendoza said cheerily. My stomach was beginning to tell me, not a very good sailor. But at least we were moving. At this rate, and if we got a decent connection in Cairo, we'd be in Luxor by Sunday. By my reckoning, this was a whole day earlier than planned. It was less smelly in the fresh air, so we stayed up on the deck until the boat left the harbour. Surprisingly quickly, the coast of Greece shrank away behind us. What replaced it on all sides was the sea, as dark and steep as mountains. Though I clung on to the handrail for dear life, I'd soon had enough of being battered by spray. I'm going to lie down, I told Tulip. I'll come too, she agreed. Our cabin was basic. The bunks were bare mattresses, the windows little misted-up portholes. But at least there was a slop bucket in the corner, which, if my guts were anything to go by, I'd be acquainted with very soon. Oz was already here. He'd commandeered one of the bottom bunks by spreading out Alex's old Egyptian books, his own sketchbook, pencils, pens. How can you read in this weather? I groaned. Easy, he replied, without even looking up. Outside it was getting stormier and darker, and it was still only mid-afternoon. As Oz kept on reading, Tulip and I lay on our bunks, lolling this way and that way with the waves. Every now and again there'd be a massive one that made your stomach drop like you were going over a bridge. All the while I tried not to think about food, which for me was very unnatural. When one particularly huge wave smacked into the side of the boat, it sent us and the cases sprawling across the floor. In a cabin so small there wasn't far to fall, but my suitcase came open. I already knew the catch on Mum's case wasn't the strongest. All my clothes scattered across the floor, Professor Hanawati's translations in amongst them. So too did the old cardigan I'd wrapped the jar in, but it unravelled somehow, and the jar was no longer inside. Immediately I was on my knees, searching frantically through my clothes. Oz crouched beside me and peered under the bunk. "It's here," he said. Being smaller, he was able to slide his hand right under the slats and pull it out again. "Oh, thank you." I took it from him. The jar was dustier than ever now, but luckily didn't seem damaged. Yet seeing it again, unwrapped, in daylight, made the back of my neck prickle. There was strange magic in this jar, all right. Tulip seemed to sense it too, for she started briskly rubbing her arms like she was cold. There was something else not right with it. As I turned it in my hand, it looked lopsided, like if you put it on a table, it'd topple over. Worried that I'd damaged it, I held it to the light for a better look. "It's the lid," Tulip pointed out. "It's moved." She was right. The Anubis head stopper was facing the wrong way. Anyone with eyes could see it had come loose. It didn't take much to open it, either, which was astonishing considering how before, when we'd heaved and pulled, it hadn't moved a jot. Now all it took was a gentle twist. A dry, gritty grinding noise, and the Anubis head was in my hand. The jar was open. I glanced at Tulip, at Oz. In a flash, we were all peering inside. "I can see something white," Tulip said eagerly. "Have a look, Lil." Slipping my hand in sideways, I touched what felt like very thick paper. Oh, so carefully, heart in my mouth, I pulled out what looked like a scroll, neatly folded and tied with leather. I'd seen paper like this before in the British Museum. It was papyrus, made from a plant, Grandad told me, that grew in swamps near the Nile. "Whoa," Oz breathed in sharply. "I bet that's very old." "What is it?" Tulip pressed. "Can you open it?" The papyrus looked so ancient it was almost flaking. I was pretty sure what it was by now. It made it doubly exciting and doubly important to see it all in one piece. Very gently, using just the tips of my fingers, I eased the scroll open a little way. "I think it's Lysandra's account," I told the others. "The rest of it, I mean. Professor Hanawati mentioned he'd found it in the jar. Looks like he put it back there." Tulip whistled under her breath. "Did he finish translating it?" "I don't think so. What I'd read only took us up to Maya choosing the tomb site, so if this was the whole account, the end of Kiki's story would be here too. The problem was, I wasn't an Egyptian scholar. Lysandra's tiny scrawl was visible through the paper, and backwards, forwards, upside down. I couldn't make head nor tail of it. "I might be able to work some of it out," Oz offered, "with the help of these," and he patted Alex's books one by one like talismans. Dear Oz, his serious, big-eyed face, gazing at the jar as if the secrets of the universe lurked there. Maybe they did. Maybe this was a chance for him to put into practice all the things his big brother had taught him, and he'd learned for himself. Or maybe it was simply the only choice we had. "Do your best," I said, handing the paper over. Through the smeary porthole windows, late sunshine poured in. The storm outside seemed to be easing at last. Time passed. We lit lanterns and shared some biscuits. When Mrs. Mendoza stuck her head round the door, we told her everything was fine. It was morning before we knew it, and through the cabin porthole Tulip announced with a yawn that she could see land. Together we stood on tiptoe, staring at what almost looked like a line of cloud on the horizon. "Is that really Egypt?" I asked. Tulip smiled. "Got to be." It was incredible to think we were nearly there. "That's perfect timing." A voice wafted up from the bottom bunk, making us both spin round. It was the first time in hours that Oz had uttered a single word. "Did you manage to make sense of it?" I asked eagerly. "Is it the ending?" In answer, he patted places for us to sit, not quite next to him, so we could hear the story he'd been poring over all night long. And you'll have to wait tomorrow to hear what that story was. I hope you're enjoying it so far, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. I'll speak to you very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.